So today we'll try our best to see if we can cover two topics. One is administering Azure resources, and the other one is Azure networking as well, virtual networking, I mean. So um, I'm going to be sharing my continue our tourism as we did last time as well. So how do you administer Azure resources? So there are different ways in which you can administer Azure resources. You can do that as either using the portal or PowerShell or Bash, and we'll also have a lab at the end of this session where you have to manage Azure resources by using ARM templates. The lab will be made available on the Discord channel, and you can try it in your lab environment yourself. So just like last week, we did some things on the Azure portal. We managed some resources on the Azure portal. We created a resource group. We created some things on the Azure portal. So I'm just going to show us a quick preview of how we can do that again on Azure portal, and how we can use that again using PowerShell as well. So we'll configure Azure resources. So I'm going to try to create a storage account. So you come to home. We all know we can access this portal, right? It's just portal.azure.com, as I said, mentioned last week. So we're going to try to compare the different administrative tools, and from there you can pick up your preferred one depending on your workload or depending on your environment as well. So I'm going to try to create a storage account using the portal. So if I type storage account, I click on storage accounts, I click on create. Okay, so now we can see this storage account. I can pick a resource group. I'm going to pick textile as CHAM2. I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it storage. It's going to give me an error. Storage account 0106. Let's see. It's already taken. Wonderful. Storage accounts. Let me just use my name then. Okay, that's unique. So it has to be unique across all boards. And I'm going to do it in North Europe because I'm in North Europe. I'm going to skip all this and just go to review and create. Validation is in progress. So this is just using the portal to administer. If you have a question, please type the question in. Esther, I see your hand is up. Just type the question in the chat. So I'm just going to click on create. But before I click on create, I want to view these automation templates because I'm going to talk about automation template later on. So I want us to take a look at these automation templates. I can see that validation has been passed. So if I click on this automation template, I'm going to download it. I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'm just going to download it because we're going to use it later on. So I'm going to download it. I'm going to go back to my storage account. Oh gosh, I have great. I have to do it again. Storage account.
Sorry, can you zoom your screen?
Oh, okay. Can we see it now? Is it better?
Yes, it's better.
Okay. So review and create. I already downloaded the template already, so there's no need for me to re-download it again. So I click on create and it's going to get created in few seconds time. So that's how using the Azure portal to create things works. Now I'm going to show us how to also use PowerShell and also use the Azure Cloud Shell that is already here. I spoke about in the last class. So now for the Azure Cloud Shell, and I want you to notice the difference between this and PowerShell, which is not really much of a difference, but just that there are just some extra steps you have to do if you are using PowerShell. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate how to use the Azure Cloud Shell to do this same thing we just did. So when you use the Azure Cloud Shell, you can just type, let's see, new AZ storage. Let me just type AZ storage. Yes. So I'm just going to ask it for help because I don't know the code, the command line I am supposed to run, right? So if I just type help, let's see what it does. So it says from the AI knowledge database, let me expand this. From the AI knowledge database, right? This is how to create a storage account in a resource group. So now I'm just going to type this out, and I'm going to try to use the storage account to create similar thing to what we just did on the portal. So if I type AZ storage account create, go this back, and I do dash name. So I have to name it something unique again. So I'm going to start with match this time around, match storage. Resource group. Resource group. Resource group should be tech champ. So I'm not sure if I'm correct or yeah, to give an error if I'm not correct anyway. Location is North Europe because I'm in North Europe, right? I don't think it's case sensitive. And the SKU stands for the type of subscription I want for it. Is standard, and that's called LRS. Now let's try. So it's running. It should, yeah, starting running as we can see. As mentioned last class, it's important to understand how PowerShell runs, because when you're trying to write the exam, they may give you something like half of the command line and ask you to complete it or something like that. So now we can see it has been created. If we go back, and let me read this back. 3 minutes ago. This is the one this is not the one I created. Or resources. Let me just do it. I think I named this matches something anyway. Right. We can see that I created matches storage just a few minutes ago using this TechChamp 2, using this using the Cloud Shell. Now we are going to do the same thing using PowerShell, and this also is using PowerShell as well as its runtime. It's using PowerShell here as well, but I want to use the PowerShell that's on our PC. So how are we going to do that now? So I'm going to search for PowerShell. It's all on our as long as there's a Windows PC, PowerShell is made available to you. So if you search for PowerShell on your Windows PC, if you have a Windows PC, you can also search the way I'm searching as well. Or you guys cannot see that as I'm searching, as on the other screen. Okay. All right. So if you search for PowerShell, you are going to get this screen here, right? And I have two PowerShell, and I'm going to show you why we run as an administrator. So you can either run PowerShell normally, or you can run it as an administrator. And why should you run as an administrator? You run as an administrator if you want to do some admin work, like installing the modules, right? So, and why do you install modules? If you want to communicate to Azure, how do you tell your PowerShell that's on your Windows PC to communicate to Azure? So now, if I run this, let me remove this one. If I run this using the normal, if you can see this one is administrator, this one is just normal PowerShell, right? So if I just run this now, we can see that I have an error saying administrator rights are required to install the modules. So the basics of PowerShell is, if you need anything to install, I would always recommend to always use admin anyway to run your PowerShell, because anybody doing PowerShell is already doing admin duties, right? Most people that would tend to use PowerShell for this kind of duties are already admin. So why not just use your admin to do it? So if you want to run PowerShell, you search for PowerShell on your Windows PC, you click on run as an administrator, then you run the PowerShell. Now, there are different ways to use PowerShell, but the most common thing that we do in PowerShell is either to get, to create, to delete, or to update. You can also do so many other things, right, depending on the module, and every module is different. There's Office 365 module, there's Exchange Online module, there's Azure module, and the rest of it. So now I installed module AZ account because I wanted to sign into my Azure account. And when I installed it, let me remove this one now, since it's not admin, so it's useless, sort of. Where is it? This one, right? No. All right. So so I like using the ISC as well because the ISC give you this fancy notepad where you can always like edit your stuff. You can also use the normal PowerShell, but it does not give you this fancy notepad. Uh, so it depends on your preference anyway. So they are using like three type of PowerShells on your PC when you try to find PowerShell. So I like using the ISC one, and I run as an administrator. Uh, so I installed the module AZ account. If I run this, just this one, it's not going to give me anything because it's already there. So nothing's going to happen. But when you run it afresh on your own PC, it's going to ask you some questions and you have to click either yes or yes to all, depending on your preference. So when you click on yes to all, it's going to run, it's going to see it's running so many things, it's going to install the module online as well. I also installed a few modules as well because I wanted to do some demo with us today. So now, the next thing I want us to do is I want us to create a storage account using PowerShell now. But before I do that, I remember I spoke about you can use PowerShell to either get or to update or to delete or to remove or stuff like that. So if you want to get all the all the resource group in your environment, right? Using PowerShell, probably you want to do something after you get it. So for example, if I go back to home and I go to resource groups, right, on the portal, you can see that I have how many 19 resource groups. So now if I go to my PowerShell, where is it? If I go to my PowerShell and I type get resource group, it's going to give me all of those 19 as well. But I want to format it to be like a table, right? So if I click on this other one, and by the way, this what I'm clicking on is display button. So this, if I click on this green one, this fully play one, it means run everything on this notepad. But if I click on this one, it means run wherever the cursor is, like the selection. So if I want to run only line 2, for example, I just click on line 2 and I click on run selection. So if I click on this, you can see that it's in a table format, right? But if I click it like this, if I run this other one, it's in this format. So depending on how you want to view it, right? This is just getting. So getting is just to get, to see what you have. Maybe you forgot the names, Textiler Champ, or you forgot something, just want to get it, just want to see what you have, see your users. If you want to see that TT exists in your organization, use a get. But you can check online for the particular line of commandlet, or you can use the help, as I mentioned, in the Cloud Shell as well. So that's what you use PowerShell for. And also you can use PowerShell to create like new resource group. Now I'm going to create a new resource group called RG10, right? If I click on this and I change it to North Europe, because I'm in North Europe, new AZ resource group, and I run this. Let's see. Okay, succeeded RG10. And how do I know if it succeeded or not? Now, if I do a get resource group, get dash AZ tab. So if you want it to be fast, you can just type half of it and just click on tab button. Tab again. So name tab RG10. So if I run this, we can see that it exists. But if I run RG11, for example, because I don't have RG11, if I run it, it's going to give me an error. The resource group does not exist because I don't have it. But if I create it and I put RG11 here and I run this one, it's going to create it. And when I do get AZ resource group, we can see that now I don't get that error again. Again, if I put 12, I'm going to get the error because it does not exist. So I don't know if you understand like how these things work. Now, if I go to my portal as well and I refresh, if I refresh now, I should change to 20, yes, or maybe 21 because I had 10 and 11. So we can see that RG10 now exists as well. Let's see, it should be 21 soon anyway. But RG10 now exists. I go back to my PowerShell. What can I do again? I can also do to get everything. Get this. We can see RG10 is here, RG11 is here. Let me go back to the portal and refresh again. So it's taking a while. Let me refresh the whole page, reload the site. Usually just take PowerShell is usually faster anyway. Anyway, RG11 has not yet come here anyway. So we can also delete resource group using PowerShell as well. So we can also delete using PowerShell as well. So how do we remove it? We can run this command, remove AZ resource group name. Let me start with RG10. Let me start with RG10. So I'm going to run this. It's going to ask me, are you sure you want to remove this? And I click on yes. And it's going to run the scripts, run the back end, and it's going to delete in few. Still running. Give me a second. Give it a second. Okay, so now it has been deleted. So if I click on get AZ resource group 10, it should give me an error because it has been deleted now. So you can see that it does not exist because it has been deleted. But if we see before, RG10 was here. But because I've deleted it using PowerShell, it does not exist any longer. Let me try and refresh and see if it has. Yeah, RG10 has left even on the portal as well. It seems to be fast in this area as well. Another way you can delete a resource group is to do it this way. So this is a pipe. It means I'm running 2 commands in one go, at a go. So I'm getting it. I'm going to get RG11, for example. Then I'm going to remove it. So what does this line of command does? It's just like, okay, Sarah wants me to get this first to be sure it exists. Then if it exists, you remove it. So if I run this command let, RG11 does not exist. So I'm going to try to create, let me try to create maybe 12. It doesn't confuse me. Okay, 12 exists, but I don't know if it's ready to be deleted. So RG12 now, let's see. Okay, so RG12 is still getting provisioned anyway, so it cannot be deleted yet. But we can try again later on, and we can see that we'll be able to delete it. Or let me try RG01. I think I have RG01. Let's see if it's going to. Does not exist as well. It exists there. I want to delete things that I need. Okay, anyway, we saw that RG10 was deleted. I don't know why it's not deleting again. Oh, okay. Can anybody notice the mistake I made? There is no space. So let me put the space now. Let me try. 11. You see, are you sure you want to remove resource group 11? I say yes, and it's gone. So the tricky thing, I'm so glad I made a mistake. So we can see that sometimes you make mistake, and the tricky thing about this is you have to identify what was wrong. Sometimes it may exist, and maybe just your line of command letter was wrong. So now that it's still running, now it's gone. So if we go to get RG11, it's going to give us an error that does not exist any longer because we've deleted it as well. And if we come here as well, we'll see that RG12 now shows, but RG11 is gone and RG10 is gone because we deleted it using PowerShell. So that's just how to use PowerShell to do basic deleting, getting, and creating in Azure. I'm still going to use PowerShell to create a storage account as we just did. We created a storage account in the portal and in Azure-Cloud Shell as well. So if you want to create the same storage account using PowerShell, I'm going to explain this. I took this from the Microsoft Learn anyway, so it's available on the internet as well for a perusal. CLS to just to clear all this error. Okay, so now I'm going to run this command let, and I love this because it's in a way I can explain everything that is going on here. So now this is a variable. Resource group name is a variable. A variable is just a container that you can use to store string or numbers or anything you want to store, right? For those that don't have any scripting or coding knowledge, a variable is just used to store a value, okay? So this is a variable. For example, and this is how you write variable in PowerShell. You can put this name equals to Sarah, or you can put name is equals to, you can put $, $sign name is equals to read host prompt please what is your name. You can pass. Okay, give me a second, guys. I'm coming. All right, sorry about that. So now if I run this, it's going to ask me, please, what is your name? And it's going to store it in this container, right? It's going to store it in, can you see? Please, what is your name? Sarah is my name. So now it has been stored in this variable name. So later on, I can use this variable to write my command, right? So that's what variable is. So variable is where you store like a string or a number. It can be anything. It can even be password, but it's not advisable to store your password in things like that. So so this is basically what PowerShell is all about. So now in this commandlet, we have resource group name is equals to please enter the resource group name. Location is enter your location, and your storage account is enter the storage account name. Then it's now going to create it based on whatever it is we did. Like new storage account is equals to this resource group name that we've already entered here, the name and the location that we've entered, and it gave it an SKU name. So this is our PowerShell, just the basics of PowerShell. So if I run this commandlet now and I click on run here, it's going to start asking me questions. So enter the resource group name. Let's call it, we already have textile as champ. So let's use textile as champ that we already have. Oh, sorry, tech champ 2. What's the name again? Tech champ 2. Let's use tech champ 2. So tech champ 2, and it's going to ask us what location. I'm going to put North Europe, and it's going to ask what's your storage account name. What do you want to name your storage accounts? I'm going to name it, probably let me use my last name instead, backend, something like that. So now it's going to take, that's taking those information from me. Now it's going to create the storage account. So we're going to give it a few seconds. It's going to create the storage account. And basically, this is how PowerShell works. So before I move on to ARM templates, now is the still loading. And while it's loading, does anybody have any question regarding what we just discussed about just now? Any question? Okay, no question. So I'm going to be moving on to the next part. But before I move on to the next part, let's be sure that what we created actually exists. Okay. So let's go to TechChamp.
There's a question in the chat box.
Okay. What's the question? See. It's just to clarify, is resources group individual given access to perform different tasks on the cloud? I don't understand the question. So, but resource group is like a container that's group your resource group is a container that groups your resources together. For example, if I want to work on a particular application and there's going to be so many things on the application, I may want to use a virtual machine, a virtual network, and different kind of things. I'm going to put it in one resource group and tag it as, okay, this is for the IT admin department for this social application, so that when somebody wants to maybe delete it by mistake, or when somebody is trying to like manage everything and like, okay, why did they create this resource group? What is it used for? They can say, okay, this resource group is used for this social thing, right? And they can see all the resources that are in that resource group, so they don't touch it. It can be a storage account that's inside the resource group. It can be virtual machines, it can be virtual network, which we're going to be talking about as well. So I don't know if that answers the question in a way. But if I don't understand your question, please just try to reconstruct the question, and I'll try my best to answer it. Or if you want to come off mute as well, that is fine. The next question is, in the workplace, is it a requirement to use both the portal and the shell, or a person can choose to carry out tasks in either of the two? I don't think it's mandated, at least where I work, to use any of them. It's just based on personal preferences. And also for the exam, you have to know how to use all of them because they're going to ask you questions based on everything as well. And another reason why, okay, thanks, Titi. Another reason why you may want to use PowerShell is to do like complex automations or try to use it for ARM template as well. You can also use the portal for that anyway, as long as you have your templates ready. But everything is based on preference and everything is based on what you feel very comfortable with, okay? So you can add, the good thing is that the portal is getting better day by day as well. So you can either use the portal or you can use PowerShell. But it's good to not use PowerShell as well. I find it's very, I prefer to use PowerShell anyway to do bulk stuff. For example, I want to create bulk users. I prefer to use PowerShell. I just have my CSV file, Excel file, so it can read all the, for example, if I want to create like multiple, let me go back to the PowerShell now. So for example, if I want to create a multiple storage accounts, I can have a Excel file where I've already put all this name in one place and put all this location in another column, right? So what the PowerShell will just do is it goes through my Excel file and just reads the name and create them like ASAP instead of me creating it one by one by one by one by one. I don't know if that makes sense. I wish I have one. I'll try to see if I can spin up one for the end of this class. I'm not sure I can, but I'll try to see if I can spin up one and we can look at how we can create like bulk stuff using PowerShell and Excel. So that's the advantage of using PowerShell over using the portal. So you can do bulk creation of things as well. Moving on now, I'm going to be moving on to the next subtopic under this topic called ARM templates. So ARM templates is just an Azure Resource Manager template that, well, let me just share the PowerPoint slide. So ARM templates is used to improve consistency, and you can use it to, like, you can always reuse it when you are creating your resources, right? It reduces manual error or repetitive tasks as well. It also is used for expressing complex deployments. This is a little bit, just, I won't call it too complex, but it's just different from probably what we are used to because it makes use of JSON as well. So I'm just going to show us how to use it using the portal. I don't want to open Visual Studio Code. I don't want to spin up Visual Studio Code yet, but I'm going to show us how to deploy it using portal and what it looks like so that you can have a feeling of what ARM templates look like. But before that, I'm going to show us using PowerShell first because I think Microsoft has one already. So if I go to this script here, all right. So now this is also a storage account creation. However, this is a little bit different from the one we did. This one we did it manually, we did everything ourselves. But if we see here, Microsoft gave us a URI. If I go to this URI, it's going to give us some things that we may not understand. The JSON file, I'm going to go there. I'm just going to show you what an ARM template look like. If I go to that link that is in PowerShell, it's going to give us this schema. So this is what it looks like. It's a storage account. So if I run this now using this link with PowerShell, if I run this, enter resource group name, tech champ 2, again, tech champ 2, enter location, North Europe. I'm going to show us how it looks like in the portal so we don't get confused as well. So this is using PowerShell to create it in ARM templates. It's going to create a new storage account for us as well. While it's running, I'm going to show us how to use it using the portal. Excuse me. So. Okay. You know what? Let me just do like I'm creating storage account again and get a fresh template and show us from scratch. So I click on storage accounts, create. Storage account names, matter of names now. I don't want to create, I just want to get the template as I did in the beginning of the call, view automation templates. And I'm going to, so we can see we have what they call parameters. And if we see, we can see North Europe, we can see my name, my special, things that can be changed is parameters. You can see storage V2 based on what I've chosen. So instead of me doing this, manually every time I want to create a storage account, I can always just download these templates, and I'm having another template again. So I can always download this template and I can always deploy it using this template that I have. So now I'm going to unzip that file that I just downloaded. Download, what's the name of the template again? Downloads, template 2, okay. So template 2, I'm going to extract all, we can't see my screen, right? Okay. Let me share this other part. Okay. So this is the template 2. If I click on extract all, comes to the screen again. I'm going to change where the document is so I don't get confused. So I'm going to extract it to textilers. Let me just create a new folder here as well. Let's folder. Okay, extract it. All right, so it's in the folder called Sarah under textilers, right? And how do you deploy these templates? And so that it makes sense to you, if I go back home and I type deploy a custom template. So now when you go to deploy a custom template, you can see there are already common templates that are there. If you want to create a Windows virtual machine and you don't have a template, you can always use the one that's provided by Microsoft. But because we have our own templates, we can build our own templates, right? So when you click on build templates, we click on load file. So if you click on load file, it's going to see Sarah here. You first click on templates. If you click on template and click on open, you get this, and you click on save. You can see now. Okay, now if we see, we can see that it's very, so many things to fill. Nobody wants to fill this. Nobody has time for this, right? But if I click on edit parameters and I click on load file and I click on the parameters that we downloaded and I click on open and I click on save, we can see that everything has changed. Mass special is available, North Europe. That template I got the other time is available. So I can always reuse this template. The only difference is that I may just have to change the name and change the resource group, right? So if I click on Textilers TechChamp 2 and I click on region and I create it, review and create, it's going to create the storage account for us under TechChamp 2 named Mass Special using the template as well. So that's the advantage of using template. The advantage of using template is that if you already have a template, or maybe when you created a storage account, you are okay with that template, you can just download that template and keep using it to create more things in your organization instead of you starting afresh and clicking and picking and clicking everything again and choosing whatever it is you want to choose. So you can see that Mass Special is being deployed, and that's how ARM templates work. So that's all about using ARM templates to deploy resources in Azure. Do we have any questions, or should we move ahead? So there's going to be labs, right? You're going to have a lab that is going to be sent on the Discord channel where you'll be asked to also create or manage Azure resources using ARM templates. So you would have to create your own manager template, just the way I did it. You have to edit it. You have to redeploy the templates, and you can either use it using PowerShell or you can either deploy it using the portal as well. So again, we're going to share everything with you, including Microsoft Learn link, and that's the advantage of using templates. So now we are going to move on to something much more, not much more, I won't call it complex, but something much more interesting, if I will put it that way. We are going to move to the topic called virtual networking. But I will try to see if there are any questions on the chat. Okay, this is answering most of the questions already. Aminat, can you come off mute? What do you want to say?
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, ma.
Fine.
Well done. Please, I want to ask, what happens to we that don't have access to the lab? Because even the first the ones we did last week, I was trying to access the lab, but no login details, so I could not do the lab. So including this one now, how do we go about it?
Do you want to take that, please?
Amina, did you? I think, let me try and confirm. I think I shared, you filled the form, right?
Yes, I did. You sent details of the lab. I was the one that you were helping yesterday night. That was saying after I got to the portal, I was unable to log in because it was asking for credentials for me to be able to access the Azure portal.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's take it up later after the call, please.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. So we're moving on to another topic. Let me spin up the PowerPoint. Gosh, where is this PowerPoint? All right, today we're going to be talking about administer virtual networking. But before I start, I want to gauge the audience. So how many of us have familiarity with networking as a whole? Just raise your hand up if you are familiar with networking. Let me start from I'm going to start from expert and move down. Okay, if you think you're an expert in networking, can you raise your hand up? I'm going to start with experts. Okay, do we have intermediate on the call? Intermediate, somewhere between, like, you understand what networking is. Okay, do we have beginners on the call that understand what networking is? Just raise your hand. Put your hands down if you've raised your hand before. Do we have beginners? Then do we have people that have zero knowledge about networking? You've never heard, like, you don't know what networking is. So you don't know what networking is. That's what people want to get. That's the most VIPs on this call now. Okay, we have few as well. I just want to understand the audience so that I know before I move to Azure Virtual Networking. All right. Okay. No worries. You can all put your hands down. Thank you so much for engaging me. All right. Okay. So now, what is networking? So there's always something new to learn, even if you know what networking is, no worries. And also feel free to correct me since we have some experts here. So what is networking and what components makes a network, right? So we talk to our friends, we speak to our friends over the phone. We use phone numbers to speak to each other, right? So how do computers talk to themselves? How do your phone talk to your computer? How do your computer access the internet? If your hands are up, can you put it down so I don't get confused? So how do your computer speak to your internet? How do your you have a fancy fridge? How does your fancy fridge check YouTube? How does your phone talk to, I don't know, maybe your toilet is, fancy toilet as well. Maybe your toilet has internet, who knows? So that is where networking comes into place. Computers can exchange information in other ways called networking. So transfer of data. So before we used to have what they call sneakernet, or I don't know if you've heard of it before, but when you copy a file like to a flash drive or to a portable storage device, then you walk like how the flash drive is back in the days, it's not so far ago. Some of us still use flash drive, right? You take your flash drive, you copy files to it, you walk to somebody else's computer and insert it, right? That was how we exchange information. That's what we used to. That was the most common practice of exchanging information. But now things have changed. We moved to networking cables. Now we have Wi-Fi, can just easily exchange information, can easily text each other over the internet and stuff like that. So that is networking. So networking, you can simply create a computer network by hooking together all computers in your office with networking cables, right? So that's what basically networking is all about. So we have what they call router. It connects your computers to the internet. We have what's called switch. It connects to more computers together. I'm just going to quickly share a whiteboard so I can just draw what this is in my head for those that are new to networking on the call. Please let me know if you can see. We have computer here. Don't know how to draw computer like this, Abby. Okay. This looks like a computer. All right, your keyboard. All right. We have my iPad somewhere here. Okay. And we have, let's say, my phone here, right? And we have, let's say, a desktop computer or your gaming computer or something that needs, like something that needs this thing, just something like that, right? So we have a laptop here. Okay. We have my iPad somewhere, a big iPad. I have my phone, iPad, laptop, and a desktop. I just want to cover the basics before we go into Azure virtual networking, right? So now these things are on their own. So how do they speak to each other? They speak to each other through various means. Can either be through Wi-Fi or through a cable. So now we have what we call a router here. Router can look like this sometimes like this sometimes, right? And this router is connected to the internet. Okay. So I was watching a video sometime, was it last few months ago, and the guy in the video said I was learning about networking, and the guy was like, think of your router as Opera. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car, everybody gets a car. So this router is what connects everybody to the internet. So you get internet, everybody gets internet. Now there are different ways to connect to the internet. Your desktop, you can either use a cable, right? Or my laptop, you can either use Wi-Fi, right? Wireless network. And my iPad, you can use Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi. Or if your laptop is one of those olden days laptop as well that has those cables, you can also use the cable as well. So this is just basically what networking is. So for those that are very, very green into networking, I hope you understand the basics of networking so that when I move to virtual networking, we're not going to be confused. So do we have any question concerning this diagram I drew and what networking is all about? No question means that we all understand the basics of networking, right? Like we know what networking is now. If they ask us tomorrow, what is networking? It's when my laptop is connected to the internet, or when my laptop can speak to my iPad, or when my laptop can speak to my phone, etc. So every device, that how they speak to each other is through networking. Okay, so that's basically what networking is. Now, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and go back to the slides. So now we're going to talk about administering virtual networking. We are going to try to create virtual network. We are going to try to create network security group, and I'm going to give us a brief overview of Azure DNS. And from the brief overview, I want to give us a challenge to create it ourselves on the lab. So without further ado, I'm going to explain what virtual networking is first of all. So virtual network is just like how would I put it? It's basically networking, but it's virtualized. It's in a way that enables communication between multiple computers that are virtual across different offices and data center locations. I think I would have to share the whiteboard again to explain what virtual networking is. So let me share. You can see my screen again. Share. So virtual networking, as opposed to normal networking, it enables communication between multiple computers. For example, why we tend to have virtual networking and everybody has their own private virtual networking is, like, for example, this is a Microsoft data center, right? This is a very big data center, and they're like different physical servers there. Remember, I told us about cloud. Cloud is somebody else's computer. Some cloud is somebody else's server, right? And in that server, which company are we going to use now? Sarah's company. So we have Sarah and John's company, right? They both spin up like virtual machines here. Virtual machines are just another computer inside somebody else's computer that you can RDP in, you can go into. So they both, just imagine they are sharing the same network. It means that Sarah will be able to see what John is doing in his company. We don't want that, do we? So that's where the aim of virtual networking come into. So Sarah can always spin up a virtual network, right? John can spin up his own virtual network, and they're going to be privately, like, so everything in John's organization is going to be privately. Then John may now open one port that speaks to the internet. So if Sarah and John wants to collaborate, they can collaborate using that public, the public facing one. So I don't get to see what John is doing inside his organization, even though we may be sharing like the same location, the same data center in Microsoft's cloud, right? So that's just one of the advantage of virtual networking. So it just enables communication between multiple computers across different offices, different data center, data center locations, etc. So some of us have heard about VPN. It's an example of a virtual network, right? You've heard about the word VPN. Turn on your VPN. If you want to access our company's this thing, you have to turn on your VPN. So VPN is a virtual private network that creates a secure connection between one network and another over the internet. For example, there are some resources where I work I cannot access if I'm not in the company's VPN. And also, so sometimes when you're in the company's VPN, or if you're in the sometimes if you're in the office, for example, you can't open some website. I don't know if some of us work in organizations, or I've worked in an organization where you try to open, I don't know, maybe Twitter, and you say that Twitter is blocked, or you try to open like another website, maybe Reddit. Whenever you're at work, it's blocked. But if you get home and you open it, it's going to work on your own computer. So sometimes these are the reasons why companies tend to have their own private network, because they don't want users to be able to log into some shady websites on their own network, or they don't want users to be able to access some things on another network, etc. Some companies even block things like Grammarly. They don't want you to use Grammarly because they don't want you to maybe copy sensitive data to go and edit in Grammarly. Probably they don't trust third-party website, etc. Stuff like that. So that's an example of when you can use a virtual network. So I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to try to create a virtual network, an Azure virtual network. So virtual network is already there for me because I use it a lot. So, but I'm going to, if you are green in Azure, you can go home or you can search here. You search for virtual network. If I search for virtual network, I click on virtual network. So if I search for virtual network, I have some virtual network in my organization already, but for the purpose of this, I'm going to try to create a virtual network. So you can hear the word VNet. VNet also means virtual network. It's just a Microsoft way of saying virtual network. We just say VNet instead of virtual network because we are fancy. So if I click on create virtual network, I'm going to create a virtual network. So now you can change your resource group. I'm going to choose textile as champ because that's what we've been using for a while. I'm going to change the region to North Europe. I explained what these are in that last class. So if you're not here in the last class, you can always go to our YouTube channel again and get and understand what region is and why I'm choosing North Europe. I'm choosing North Europe because that's where I am, so it's easier for me to choose. So if you are somewhere in Nigeria or somewhere in Africa, you have to choose somewhere that is near you, or depending on where you want to deploy your application. Maybe your customers are in US, so you may want to use US as your region. It depends on what you want to do it. So I'm going to name these champions. Okay. Now I come to IP address, right? So how many of us know what IP address is let me go back to Teams so I can see. How many of us, those of us that said we know what networking is, how many of us are very familiar with IP address? Very good. Okay. Very good. Thank you for that. And for those that don't know what IP address is, there is nothing to worry about. IP address is basically essential for your device communication. It helps you like define your network in which you are on. And if you want to check the IP address that you are on right now, if you open CMD, maybe I should just do that so we can all see my IP address, right? Let me know if you can see my screen. So this is you just go to command prompt or PowerShell, whatever it is you prefer, and you type ipconfig, and you'll be able to see my IP address. So this is my IP address. My IP address is 192.168.1.2. Most of us IP addresses start from 192 anyway. Then we have the default gateway and we have the subnet mask, which I will try to my best to explain in a way that I can. So IP address is just something that is used to communicate with other network as well, or even website as well, which I'm going to speak about when I'm talking about DNS. So if we try to create a virtual network, we can see that we have up to 665,536 addresses. I don't think we need that. So I can minimize this to maybe 24. 24 will give me 256 addresses, or 23. It depends on your organization. How many addresses do you think you will need for this particular project? Rukayat, is your hand up because you want to ask a question, or it's up from before? So it depends on why you want to create like the IP address, right? So you can I stick with the IPv4 address, which allows up to 65,536 address. This is also crucial to ensure that you have enough addresses for your resources, but it depends on your organization need. For me, I don't think I even need up to 512 addresses, but for the purpose of this session, I'm just going to stick with 53 address. Then we have subnets. Subnet are subdivisions of your virtual network. For example, if you have like different departments like HR, engineering, etc., you can create a different subnet for each of these departments and give it a tag. And like, okay, this network here, I'm separating this one for this group, etc. So if I want to add a subnet, for instance, I just have to do it this way, give it a name, let's say HR. I can change this to, okay, it's on /23 that I've already created already. I can change the starting address if I want to. I can leave it at 24, or I can change to 25, and it's going to reduce. So the higher the number, the lesser the addresses as well. So if you want to create a subnet, but I don't want to create a subnet yet. So this is basically how to create a virtual network. And for the security part of things, there are some extra add-ons that Microsoft have that if you want to, at low or more cost, none or low cost, I think, you can add Azure Bastion, Azure Firewall, if you want to enable firewall to protect your Azure virtual network resources. If you want denial of service as well for DDoS attack, you can also do this as well here. I'm going to leave it empty for now. And if you want to go to tags as well, if you want to tag your virtual network, as I taught us in the last class as well, so it helps you organize your resources. It's not mandatory, but it can be useful when you want to check your billing. You want to know what is costing you money. You can check it by tags, right? So you review it and you create it. So now I've created a virtual network. This is one of the fastest resources to create in Azure. Now we have two different type of what's it called? Two different type of IP addresses. So I'm going to talk about public IP addresses. So if I type, okay. So now, if you want to create a public IP address, this is how you create it. Just type public IP address. You create a public IP address. However, there are different type of public IP address. There is different assignment. I mean, there is a dynamic and a static public IP address. So dynamic IP address is the assigned address that can change over an Azure resource lifespan. For example, if you create a virtual machine and once you stop it, the IP address is released, you'll not be able to use it again. But if you create a static IP address, I think it's going to incur a little bit of more charge. I think so. I'm not 100% sure. Even if you stop the what's it called? Even if you stop the virtual machine, you still have your IP address left for you. So it just depends on your organization need. If you want an assigned address that does not change over an Azure resource lifespan, you can always get the static one. But just know that if you delete the resources or delete the resource group, it's gone. That IP address is gone. So it just depends on your organization need. So IP addresses are very essential for device communication. I need the IP address to talk to you, just the same way you need my phone number to talk to me, stuff like that. So that's the basics of IP address. And subnets helps you define the network. So software help you group your addresses into like a little bit of, like, call it clusters now, into like different sub network, as it says. And you have what they call default gateway. The default gateway is your router that connects your network to the wider internet. And in what situation can you use this? For example, if I have, let's say, 10 virtual machines in my organization, I just want them to talk to each other. I don't want them to talk to the internet, right? So that's when you can use things like your virtual network. You can set up your virtual network. It's very important because you want to make sure that everybody's not talking to the internet, because once you start talking to the internet, once everything can talk to the internet, it basically means that you can easily get hacked, right? Either human error or not. So that's what virtual networking is all about. So it's just similar to like the physical networking, but the only difference is that this one is virtual, right? You don't see the cables yourself, because it's handled by Microsoft. You just spin it up and you get your IP address and you use it to communicate with other virtual machines. I'm going to move on to rules and why rules are important. They are called networks. There's what we call network security group, and how we can associate it with it and why. And I'm going to show us why we are going to do that. So I'm going to go to one of my resources that I think I have something. Is it this one? Yes, please. Is it too tiny? Yes, please ask a question.
Okay, good morning. Before we move forward, I wanted to find out what determines the number of IP addresses that we need. Like, what makes a person choose that, okay, I want the 512 IP addresses, or I want more, or I want less? And does the number of IP addresses affect the performance of the virtual network?
That's a very good question. So if you are architecting, it's based on forecasting, right? If you are architecting your environment, for example, if you plan to, everything is based on forecasting. What kind of company is it? There are many questions you are going to ask. Is it a small business company? Is it a big company? Is it just a lab environment? So those are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself before creating like a virtual network. If it's something that is going to be on a big scale, that you're going to need, like, I don't know, 10 virtual machines or something bigger, hundreds of virtual machines or hundreds of resources that's going to need their separate IP addresses, that's when you're going to, like, okay, I'm going to use this or I'm going to use that. So it all depends on the organization need, right? What was the second question again? Sorry, I've forgotten.
The second question was, does the number of IP addresses, does it affect the virtual network performance, or it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters. But Titi, do you think it matters, Titi? I don't think it does. What? I don't think it does. Yeah, it does not. Thank you. Do you wanted to make a comment, Osa?
Yes, I wanted to ask, because you did mention that VPNs are introduced so that we don't, or users rather, don't access some, or rather external people don't access internal resources, right? In the office where I work, we don't use VPNs. Instead, we use VDIs, a virtual desktop interface, which gives you access to internal resources. Now, in the case of Azure, let's assume you spin up a VM, right? And then you want to mask your internal websites or resources to external people. right? So how do you do it in this case if you are not using a VPN, since the VM already is in a virtual environment, right? I don't know if my question sits well.
I think it does. It makes sense, and I think that's what I'm going to talk about just now. But if this does not answer your question, then I will try to see, maybe try to react the question, or Titi can jump in and help as well. But I'm going to talk about rules now in virtual networking and how you can deny or allow people to come into your network security rules. Although I'm going to be using RDP as an example in this case, but it also works for any other type of protocol as well. All right. Okay. So this is a virtual machine. It's called this very weird name. I was going to do a test earlier, few weeks ago, few days ago. Sorry. And if I come to networking, and I go to networking settings, yes. All right. So this is my rule. I'm going to show us what NSG is all about. But before then, I want to show us these rules. So now, when I created this virtual machine, I used a template I found on the internet, not on the internet, on Microsoft Learn to create it. And because I used the template, everything was blocked. There was this rules, this allow Microsoft Office was not there, and RDP was set at 1,000. It was denied. So what it means is that not nobody, and like no one can just RDP into my into this virtual machine. Like no one can connect to this virtual machine except I create a rule that allows them to come in to sign in. So I believe this answers your question. So there are different type of rules you can create, different kind of port rules that you can create to allow like an external person to either RDP into a machine or to access any of you can create an exception rule that can allow them to access anything in your organization. I just want to show us a quick how it's going to block me, and how I'm going to like allow myself to go into the organization and do whatever it is I want to do. I should have started this earlier on before this call. So I'm going to give it a while for it to go. But I'm going to go back to network settings. I'm going to explain this. So I created this rule, and if you notice, I have 1030, I have 1020, I have 1010. So we have what we call order of priority. So if this will run before this will run, before this will run. So if I change this RDP now, for example, to 1,000, if I change to 1,000, and I save it. I save this to 1,000. It means it's on top, right? So let's see if I'll be able to sign into my virtual machine. So now that I'm in the virtual machine, it has started. I'll try to connect via RDP. Okay. Good thing there is check access now. The VM must be turned on. It should be turned on by now. Okay. All right. So if I do check access and I click on check access, so it's going to check if my local computer IP address can access this VM. So let's see, it's checking. Give it a while. We can just, since it has downloaded already, we can just download the RDP file and just see if we can access it. Right. So if I click on this and I click on connect, come here. I'm going to try to connect. Okay, it gave me an error. It says I cannot connect to this remote computer for one of these reasons. One, it's not enabled, it's turned off, it's not available on network, blah, 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 blah. All right. So that's still checking access. I don't know why it's very slow anyway. We can also see the error I got, right? That I was unable to connect to this machine. However, if I go back to the networking settings and I come back here, right? Because I'm trying to connect through RDP. That's why I'm creating an RDP rule. First of all, I want to change this one to 1030 back. Okay. 1030. So it comes down. Right. And I create a new rule. I create port rule inbound. So now I'm going to choose IP addresses. I'm going to paste my IP address. Okay. I'm going to choose leave it as star. I'm going to change to RDP, not custom, because I want to RDP into this virtual machine. If I click on RDP and I click on allow or deny, so I'm going to click on allow. So I'm not going to put that 1040. Can someone tell me why I'm not going to put on 1040? Can anybody in the class tell me why I'm not going to use 1040 and why I'm going to change the number? Anyone? Nobody.
Yeah, the number. Yeah, the priority detect.
Okay, yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Jan. So why I'm not going to put it on 1040 is because if I put it below this RDP, nothing is going to change because this RDP, let me just do add. And so if I put it here, 1040, it's going to get denied here before it's even going to like answer me, right? So I don't want that. So I'm going to put it on maybe 1000, right? Give it 1000. And I'm going to put allow my home IP, right? And I can save, it's going to come up. So once it comes up, I'm going to be somewhere here. And because I'm somewhere here, it means it's allowed. So this one's going to run first before RDPing. So I'm going to try again to RDP into that virtual machine. I'm going to click on connect. Let's see if it's going to work this time around. So, let's see. Oh, it did not work. It did not work, fellas. Let's go back to connect and check access. This is my IP here. I chose the wrong IP. Sorry, guys. 51.37. I go back to, okay, my demo is not working. All right, let me paste the correct IP address there. Sorry about that. I save, updates, I try again, downloads, open file, connect. Let's try again. Hopefully it works this time around. Oh, yes, so now it's working. Unfortunately, I don't think I can remember my password, but let me just try.
Record is as added. Remain a second one. This second one is always a text record. This text record, when you are adding a domain, this text record is always very important. It comes with every domain you are trying to add. However, the moment you add a text record for one service, as long as it is the same domain that you are trying to add to any other service, one single text record will suffice for everything. Subsequently, if you create another app and you want to add custom domain also, and the custom domain is still a child domain under your root chavi.net that we are using, for instance, this one single text record will suffice for everything. You only need to add either the A record or the C name record afterwards. So I'm going to create now a test record, txt record, and the name of the record is Azure.ww. Let's first copy this and put, that's the name, and then we'll copy the value. So this is the value. And transfuse also in second. So, and then I click add. So now we have the two records created. So you need to now go back into this environment and then go and say validate. So validation might not happen immediately. You might need to wait a few seconds. So this is expected. So you have to keep trying until it is populated on the internet. There are also sites that you can use to check whether your DNS checker, for instance, DNS checker. I hope I remember it. DNS checker. So, or you use there's this MX toolbox. MX toolbox.com. You can use it to know when your DNS server or the record you added has populated over the internet. So if I put, I want to check for a particular record type, is lookup, DNS lookup, looking for a record. Okay, so if I do a records, and then I'll do www.travel.net. So I'm saying to go and check whether there's a record. Which server do I want to use? You can use Google. It's okay. Then I say look up. So if it's able to bring any record for me, it means it has populated. If it's not able to, then I still have to wait. So you might need to be refreshing here, kind of try again. That's what you do until. So the simple thing we are trying to do is to tell you that this domain, that the DNS you add here, does not affect any other service. If you create any other app service and you want to make use of this same domain, that's travel.net, for instance, it will now be carrying different name. Like we said, you cannot have two identical names in the you cannot have two identical names for the same record. So I will do this now. I've created a record before. Let's say we want to create CNAME record. It will reject it, because I'm still going to use www. So I go to CNAME record. See, you see what it's even already saying? There is already a record set with the same DNS zone, maybe within the same DNS zone. So you can't, it will not, this apply everywhere on any DNS post that you are using. You cannot add the same name twice. But I can choose to say maybe MX, for instance, or give a different name, my website or my site dot. It will allow me, even though it is the same value or the value is pointing to the same thing, it's going to allow me. But if it's the same name I'm putting, it will reject it. So that's how it works. So with this one, when you try it in your lab, if you are able to, you will be able to see it when it populates. But for now, it is yet to be populated. This is what you'll be getting. So that's that. Was there any other thing? Maybe is there another? Is that clear?
Yes,
Last week record.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Last week, is there another question around the DNS before we go out of here? Okay, so that's all. So for last week, for last week recording, I've posted on the chat pane. I posted the recording link, and then it's also available on the what's it called channel as well. Sir, your hand is up. Sorry, I can't. That's what I'm asking, because once you are sharing, you cannot see except you have multiple screen. Do you still have a question? Okay, I guess you're fine. Yeah, thanks. Rebecca has helped us to repost the record. So please visit it to get understanding of what happened last week. So that will be all. So now for Hamina, Okay, yes, Rebecca, please.
Hi, I just have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You know, the labs, I saw 3 PDFs, lab 1, 2, and 3, I think. When I go into the
Yeah.
lab, it looks like a simulation where you click on things and it tells you next steps. Is that the lab, or is it the usual lab where you go into a specific server and complete actions?
Okay, so if I may ask, which of the first one that say creating users and group, you might not
Yes.
be able to. They stated it in that lab environment as well. That's why they put a link for a click through for you
Okay.
to just click through and see. And the reason for that is that lab is hosted in somebody's environment, in somebody's tenant. So they wouldn't want students to start creating account and populate a lot of users within their environment. You understand? That's
So
why
it's
that limitation is there.
a click-through
But
lab.
yeah, sorry.
Is it a click-through lab or an actual lab?
So the first one is a
Yeah.
click-through lab.
Okay.
Yes, so you have to go through that.
Okay, then the other ones are real labs.
The other ones should be real lab. Has anybody
Okay.
done lab 2 or 3? Lab 2 and 3?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, were they click through also or actual
No,
lab?
actually, I used my own tenant to
Okay.
achieve that. So I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
John, if I might ask, which subscription do you have to do that?
No, he has a subscription that he's
Okay.
using.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm asking. Is it a student one or a free day one, free 30-day one? What type of subscription?
Okay, that's my personal subscription.
A personal. Okay.
So that is also another thing. If you're a student in a school, that's university, you can actually use, hopefully your school will be listed as one of the schools that is allowed to create a subscription. You can actually go that route as well. But we have to, the limitation we have to just see how we can maneuver, some of those things. That's that's the reason why you might be experiencing some hiccup. But it's
All right.
not everything that is click through. It is just anything that will affect the environment.
Okay. That's
When it
fine.
comes to users, user management, this was the management group. That's management group.
Okay.
You might not be able to do all of that. It will
Okay.
be
That's
click
fine.
through. They will
That's
give
my
you.
question.
But
Thank you. Thank you.
okay, yeah, thanks. Okay. So guys, thank you. You can drop off. We'll finish the class for the day. I'm going to drop the various link for assessment about knowledge check rather after the class. I'm going to drop it on this thing as well on Discord channel. So we'll get an environment that we'll be able to use to do projects. I mean, are you on a stream lab or go deploy? Which one is your lab environment? Let me check.
Let's try. Okay. So I am in connecting and voila. I'm in. So this is a virtual machine. Okay. If just in case anyone doesn't know what it looks like, it's just a computer inside a computer, right? Yeah, it's still spinning up because it's the server. So it's spinning up. So we can see that I'm in, but before I was unable to get in because my IP address, my home IP address was not allowed to sign into this virtual machine, right? So that's basically how rules work. So your admin must have created a rule that make you not to be able to access some resources or websites or whatever it is, right? So this is how rules work. So this is a server, that one of my servers that I have, and now you can see that I can access this server very well. Okay, so now what is NSG then? So I've spoken about security rules. Then what is NSG? So NSG is like grouping this rule into, for example, if I want this rule to be applied to multiple resources, not just this virtual machine, because I took this from a virtual machine resource. What if I want to create a rule for the whole of like what if I want to create a rule for like multiple resources, right? So that's where NSG comes into place. So NSG comes into place. If you want to create an NSG, you give it a resource group. Let's go TechChamp to give it a name, not Europe. I click on review and create. So creating an NSG is also very easy, but it's now you have to go and start creating the rules. Then you now have to associate the rule you are going to create in this network security group to a virtual machine or to any other resources. So instead of you creating the virtual network rule, the inbound rule or the outbound rule one by one, you can always create it in a network security group and now associate it with each of them. So that's how NSG works as well. Okay. All right. So now this is my rule. I can create more rules here and associate it with a virtual machine, etc. Do we have any question? You can also put access control here if you don't want anybody to have access to this security group, for example, this network security group. You can put a limit of who is going to have access to it, maybe contributor role to just some people, reader role to some people, etc. That's how NSG works. Do we have any questions? I know this is not as this is a little bit. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so applying a rule to an NSG would only make that IP address, how do I put it, access. So, for example, you are giving your home IP access to a network resource, right? So extending it to other resources within the group, the NSG, is just for that isolated IP address. That's your home address. So that means that if you are connecting from elsewhere, right, you have to create another rule and apply same to the NSG, so that if you're accessing any of the resources from elsewhere outside your home,
Mm-hmm.
is that correct?
Yes. So basically, yes. Because if I go back to that, where is that resource again? What was the
Thank
name?
you.
So, Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just kind of come in a bit here.
Okay.
So you see, the NSG in Azure, right, is just like it's a firewall. It's like your firewall, and you know what a firewall does. It's simple task is allow or deny access to a particular resource. So the same thing apply. The same rule as you will configure on the firewall, it apply also under the virtual machine network security group. That's the NSG. So the NSG just give you like a basic firewall configuration feature that you can use to allow or deny who have access to the resources you have in Azure. If you take note of the NSG rule, once you went there, you have option when you are creating, you have option to permit access between two resources within the same environment. So if you have permitted access from one VM in Azure to another virtual machine in Azure, that communication is just going to be between those two. You have the option to also permit from outside, just like I said. If I'm connecting I want to connect to my virtual machine using RDP, but I want to be the only one that will connect. Now, if I have an IP, I know my IP is kind of constant, it doesn't change. In that case, I can create an NSG to allow just my IP address, RDP, to just a particular VM or to the VNet within the Azure resources, right? You can also say, okay, within an organization, we have anytime our users will be connecting, they are always going to be remoting from the office. They will not have any reason whatsoever to resort to remote from over the internet, but whenever they are in the office. So in that case, you will take the public IP address of your firewall and then go and create a rule and say, permit RDP from this with my on-premises firewall IP address to maybe any resource, any virtual machine you have in Azure on a particular either yes to that particular virtual machine in Azure, or then what it means is any other request that is coming will not be able to go through. It will be denied because you have permitted just a single IP address. Then you can also say, okay, now I have maybe 2 virtual machines in Azure. I want a way by, VNet. I want a way by which they should be able to, resources in this virtual network should be able to talk to resources in another virtual network. You can also do that. That's kind of VNet to VNet communication. So it's still rule you are going to use to permit communication between those. Now, you also talk about the rule, that's the order of the rule. It's also flow just like your firewall. It flow from top to bottom, right? Anything that is above will always take precedent. If a rule hits, if a request hits the rule, a rule number 1, for instance, meanwhile you want rule number 3 to apply to that particular request, because rule number 1 already maybe block or allow it, it will never travel down again. It's going to stop at just that rule number 1 until you now adjust it. So you must always use what we call the least restrictive. The least restrictive should be above, while the most restrictive should always be below. Otherwise, you will not be able to go if you were to allow something to go to be permitted. Meanwhile, there's a rule above that is denying it. So you always have to move over and deny all, like what we have here. You always have to move deny all down. And if you see the rule here, you will see rule permitting source VNet to VNet, source Azure load balancer to anybody within this environment, this Azure virtual network. Then from anybody over the internet to anybody over the on the Azure environment. You see that the last one is saying deny. Likewise, the RDP that was created is saying deny from any. So if you want to allow RDP now, like we have done above, you have to specifically allow from either a particular source or from any source to a single IP address in Azure. I hope we are able to clear that for you. Hello.
So sorry.
Yes, sorry, I didn't know you were expecting an answer from me. Absolutely, you've explained it clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, very good. Do we have any other questions concerning this? I'm sure that next class is supposed to be something more deep dive into VNet peering and the rest of it.
Okay, sorry. Someone said the question I also asked is that where did the internet gateway come from? So Azure environment, right? You take it like you are setting up your own. I think she make explanation of the beginning of the virtual network, like how the computers connect to your switches, the switches connect to the router, and then the router connect to the firewall, and so on and so forth. That is how the internet is being created. Now, in Azure as well, you have virtual switches. The virtual switches also have gateway that they connect to. Can you, that's Sarah, can you search for virtual gateway? So virtual gateway is also in Azure. You create your gateway as well, and it comes with every virtual machine that you have created. So this virtual gateway is like a router. This virtual gateway is take it as a router as well that help you to now do routing across all your resources in Azure. So yes, it's a virtual gateway. I think I should be able, that should have answered your question by now, I believe. If you say where did the internet gateway come from, It's still a virtual, just like you have virtual machine, virtual switch. You have virtual machine, you have virtual switch. You also have virtual gateway. And the virtual gateway, you can use it also to configure VPN, like you would do with a standard gateway device on your on-premise environment. Sarah, please take it up.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to just briefly move through Azure DNS. I'm going to explain what it's all about. And yeah. So, but do we know what a DNS record is? Has anybody heard the word DNS record before in this class? Okay, very good. Thank you. So a DNS record is basically a piece of information that links a URL to an IP address, right? Sarahmachi.dev, for example, you're going to sarahmachi.dev. Actually, there's an IP address behind that makes it easy for you to, type sarahmachi.dev. So sarahmachi.dev is what we understand, but the computer understands the IP addresses behind that. So that's basically what DNS is all about. So Azure DNS is a hosting service for DNS domains that provide name resolution using Microsoft Azure infrastructure. So if you want to create a DNS zone, you search for, do we all understand what the DNS is before I move to something more complex or something? So IP address have been resolved into DNS, or DNS have been resolved to IP address. What's the right English for that? Okay. I don't even have one. Wonderful. All right. So if you want to create a DNS, come to TechChamp 2. I'm going to keep using this one. I don't think I have one yet to create, so I'm just going to try something. Try.dev. I don't have it yet, so I'm going to see if it's going to let me review and create. For example, let me just use the one I have here. For example, I have sarahmachi.dev, right? And if I go to, let me know, I don't know if it's up and running, but if I go to sarahmachi.dev on the internet, I'm not sure it's up and running. Oh, okay. Oh, wonderful. So if I go to sarahmachi.dev on the internet, you are seeing it as a website, right? But I used Azure to do this. There's an IP address that is now connected to an endpoint that got me to this place. So that's what basically Azure DNS is all about. It's all about using IP address. For example, if you want to communicate between two resources in an environment, for you to give it a friendly name, that's what Azure DNS is all about. And we have different type of records. We have MX record, we have CNAME record, we have different type of records. If you're coming from the Office 365 side of things and you try to create a domain name for your organization, for example, you want to send an email to, when you create a tenant, you get a .microsoft domain. Then if you want to change to like maybe uber.com or something like that, you have to create in a registrar, create a record name called uber.com or sierra.com. Then you have to add the MX record so that any email that they're sending to your organization is going to get routed to, because of that record you put, to Microsoft, to your tenants. So that is basically what DNS record is all about. I don't know if I have a custom domain name that I can show us, so I can show that it work. Can we hear me?
Clear.
Okay, very good. So I have a custom domain name called sarahmachi.dev, and I have it's my primary domain because that's what I'm making use of it. And how was I able to verify this? So when you want to verify your domain name, you create a domain name under here, and you add your domain name if you have something, for example. But I don't have any other one. So if you put your domain name, it's going to give you a record. Let me just try sarahmachi.com. I know it doesn't exist, but let's just try. A domain. Okay, so now it's going to give me a txt record that I should go and add to my domain registrar. But because it does not exist, I can't do anything further. So I'm just going to have to delete it. But if it had existed, if I had paid for this domain, I can easily just copy this, go to my domain registrar, and I pull up. I take this I take it to my domain registrar and I put it there. And once I put it there, it's going to come here as verified. Microsoft is going to verify that yes, I indeed own the domain as well.
Okay, thank you so much, ma. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My question is about the domain name system. So if I maybe build an app using Azure infrastructure, um, being the owner, being the fact that I created a app in this environment, so does it mean that it automatically creates in a URL that I can share with the public?
To an extent, the theory aspect is still very important, right? So I'll just quickly run us through so that what she has been doing can make some meaning. Then in the process, we'll answer your questions required. I want to bring up my Azure environment. Okay, so quickly, while this is loading. So DNS really, just like the name, like I think you asked a question earlier, what is DNS? DNS simply means domain naming system. And what is the function of DNS? It's to help you to make easy remembering of names. Say, for instance, the IP address that I was showing the other time under virtual network. If you have to give people an IP address to a resource, it's going to be difficult for them to remember the numbers in between. They might always come back to you that, oh, they have forgotten their IP that you gave to them before. So in order to make it easy for people to remember the resources that they have access to, you use name. The work of DNS is to help you translate name into IP and vice versa. If I type google.com, for instance, on my browser, what my system is going to do is to contact a DNS server who will tell my computer the IP address. The IP address signifies the location where that google.com server is. So, but it's easier for me to remember google.com as against looking for their IP address. That is simply the work of a domain name system, right? You just translate IP into name and name into IP for easy access. And then, yes, that's it. So now, when you create a resource in Azure, every resource that you create have a URL to access them. That URL, you will notice when you create your Azure, you have whatever name you have chosen, like what we are seeing on the screen here. Whatever name you have chosen, .onmicrosoft.com is what you will have. Now for Azure, you will have when you create resources, you will have things like .azure.com and some other things at the back. Now, if you create a resource, you create a virtual machine, for instance, when you go to the property of that virtual machine, you will have a URL on it that is carrying Azure. You always see Azure and the On Microsoft alongside the URL that you have. Now, for me to, instead of me giving the long, that is usually long, instead of me giving the long URL to people to use, then I can use what they call custom domain. So from this page, for instance, you notice the default domain that we have here is saying Azure administrator or corp, something like that. That's from this diagram here, .onmicrosoft.com. But then for easy, if my environment already, we are doing business, we already have our domain. So it's easier for my user to remember our domain name as against this other strange one. So we can now add a custom domain in Azure. That is adding a custom domain. Now, when it comes to Azure services, right? Azure DNS on the, let me go next. So Azure services in Azure, it works exactly like your GoDaddy, your Is it cloud DNS or cloud shell or something? There is this other above. Let's use GoDaddy. GoDaddy is familiar to everybody. So now when it comes to zone, a zone in DNS represents a container that contains information just for a single domain. That's what a zone is. It contains different records, different DNS records. That's IP to name records for a particular domain. That's what a zone represents. You can have multiple zones that contain information for different domain on the same server, right? So in Azure, if, for instance, I was hosting my DNS at GoDaddy before, now I want to move all my resources to Azure, including my DNS registrar, my DNS hosts as well, or my domain registrar and DNS host. So what we will do is go into Azure and create a DNS zone, or even we'll transfer the domain if we already have it. If we don't have it, we register a completely new domain. Then once we register the domain, we will have access to a zone. Now, when we have access to that zone, we can easily create record. So now, if I create an app service in Azure, the app service is going to give me, I'm not sure if I have some already made app services in my environment. I don't think so. Let me see if it's not going to kind of take us a while. While this is loading, let's continue. So here, Azure, a DNS zone hosts the DNS record for a domain, and then root parent domain is registered at the registrar and then pointed to Azure DNS. So you can either buy your DNS, your domain name on Azure, then Azure become your domain registrar, or you buy your domain from a GoDaddy or Namecheap, for instance, and then Namecheap will be your domain registrar. There is difference between domain registration and DNS hosting. So you can choose to host your DNS in Azure, or you host it also with GoDaddy, and you can split that role. The two role doesn't have to be with one of the service provider or with a single service provider. So now, when you are delegating, so DNS delegation means you are giving a particular DNS server the right to be able to do some resolution on your behalf. You are giving a particular DNS server the right to be able to do name resolution on your behalf. So when you delegate a domain to an Azure DNS, one of the things you must do is to use the server names provided. So for every domain that you have, every zone that you create, you will have what we call name servers. The name servers are the servers that can do the resolution for the queries that you are sending for those domains. So for Azure, for instance, for this particular domain we created, they gave us about 4 name servers. So these name servers are the ones we are going to use. Where is this name server going to be useful? If I create a website and the website need to point to my domain, which is Azure adminincorporation.org, right? So I need to go to wherever I'm hosting my my DNS. I need to go there. That's the DNS host. I need to go there and go and tell the host that anytime you are looking for this domain or this website, the website for this server, query any of these particular servers, they will take you there. That's what it means. So now this is a root domain. A single .com is a root domain. You can have a subdomain under this. So we can have maybe us.azureadminincorporation.org. That become a subdomain rather, or child domain under this root domain. So, and each of them have their own DNS settings or record that you have to create for easy resolution. Now, when it comes to dynamic resolution of resources, you can use name. That's using name. You can use what we call alias. So at the other times, it was showing you. We'll also log in to see a bit of this in a few minutes. So let's say we have created an app service now, like we said initially. We have the long URL that say if the app service that I created was my website. So it's going to be my website dot Azure website something.org or .com. So now I want to give it as www.mycompany, which is Azure-Admin-Incorporation.org. That's www.Azure-Admin-Incorporation.org. I want to give it that. So what I will do is to go and create a DNS record. There are different type of records you can create. You have what they call a record. A record is simply pointing an IP to a name. You have CNAME record. CNAME record is simply redirecting one name to another. So for instance, if people query my website.azurewebsite.org, is to automatically redirect to www.azureadminincorporation.org. That is what a CNAME will do. So there are different types. So on this page now, if I will add a record for hello world, let me take this as www. I can put www, then anytime they type www.azure.com, it's an A record. Now I need to go to my Azure resources and retrieve the IP address that is tied to that website and add it here. So anytime people call hello world or www, it will resolve to this IP and open for them. Now, is a record, when you create a record, records are actually a set of collection or a collection of servers or names in a particular zone. Then you can have up to 20 records to any collection. That's any collection set for a DNS record set. You can have up to 20 records in it, and the records cannot contain two identical records. So for instance, I've created before an A record for www. I've pointed it to one IP. Maybe something happened. I created another web server and I want to create another www. I'm pointing it to a new IP. It will not allow me because I already have one www record that is existing. For me to put the new one, I must delete the old one for me to be able to put a new one. That's what that limitation, that's where that two identical record cannot exist within a DNS zone. So now we have option to configure what we call private DNS in Azure, or the private DNS zone. So a private DNS zone is, like we have been saying, using your own custom domain, right? Is what a private DNS zone actually represents. So you provide the resolution for virtual machines within. That is, this DNS zone that is private is majorly for resources within. Doesn't have any, nobody can query it from outside of the environment. So nobody can query it from outside the Azure environment. When you create private records, you will tie them to private IP address. When we're talking about IP address the other time, because the cost does not allow us to expand further, so you might want to go and read more about it. You have categories or types of IP addresses. You have the private IP, you have the public IP. The private IP are the IP addresses that are used internally. Take for instance, if an organization have 1,000 computers that they need to connect internally, if you have to use public IP address, you are going to be paying a lot for each of those IP that will be assigned to those 1,000 machines. So what we are allowed to do as an organization is to use private IP internally and only allow public IP for resources that are to be queried from outside our environment. So that is where this private zone also come in. When you create private zone, every record that you have is pointing to internal IP, which are private IPs. So it's remove the need for you to create a custom DNS solution. So remove that need. So if there's no need for a resource to talk to anybody outside of its own environment, there is no need for me to give it a private IP. It reduces cost for the organization, and then it's also, you can make use of it in every region. You can create a resource now and choose to remove everything public from it. We will see it in a while, right? So let's just quickly, it's not a very long this thing. Let me now go back to my Azure environment. Have I brought the new environment up here? It's this text styler. Notice. Give me a minute. Okay, so I have. Okay, good. So here, I'm going to just open this so that you see within the subscription, I have a virtual machine. I think I have a few resources. So internet. So if I go now, if I go to the resource groups, a bit of my resources here, I have just one major resource. This is a virtual machine, right? Going to the property of this virtual machine, like we talk about the DNS, you will notice, okay? So when you create a resource, it gives you a default DNS name. That's a default DNS name based on the name that you have created for that resource. And you notice every resource have its own IP address. There is public IP. If I need to access this resource from the internet now, I will use this public IP. But in order for me not to be trying to remember the IP, I can use the name. Now this name looks so long. For me to shorten it, I will need to go and do what we call DNS. I will need to add DNS, custom DNS. So now I have one DNS zone that has been created here called chavi.net. This is just a zone. If I go into the zone, I'm able to see information, I'm able to create records. So let's now say that virtual machine that I have, that we saw a while ago, let me duplicate so I can have the two information. We talk about name servers, right? For this zone in Azure, these are my name servers that are available. So if I choose to go and host my resources somewhere else, I will need to take this name server and go and update maybe places like GoDaddy. I'll go and update it that anytime it's looking for this domain, anything on this domain, it will come and query any of the domain name servers that are available here. Now, the next thing we want to do is, I have this virtual machine. Let's go back to the virtual machine. I want to shorten the name for this virtual machine, for instance. What I'm going to do here is this. First, I just copy this URL, the DNS name, the long one. Go back to your DNS record, and then I can go and create this record set. Talk about record set, that you can have up to 20 records in a set. So here now, I can add a new, I can add a new record. Let's say I want to call that machine, that if it's a website, maybe it's a www, it's hosting my website, for instance. I will put www.chaville.net, for instance. Then I need to know whether it's a record. But because I have a name, I won't be creating a record. I'll be creating what they call a CNAME record. Based on what you select, it's going to change the information on the page. Now, alias, do I want to set alias? If I say yes, it's going to ask me where I want to put this. But let's say no for now. We just want to create a simple CNAME record. Now, the time to live here is how long is going to how long is to take kind of to replicate over the internet. That is the time to live. That's what the time to live is talking about. So I'm going to say, if I can pick minutes, if it's possible, then I'll put the alias. So now this server, this www, if you call it, it will resolve automatically to this particular name because this is where it is. So now my user can easily remember www against them going az.win10.central. blah blah blah. You understand? So that's the way the DNS records work. Now, if I want to, I can choose to create a record instead. If I want to create a record, you notice it has changed to IP address instead. So I can go back to this, copy the IP address, and that's for the virtual machine, and then paste the IP address here. So I'm saying anytime they call www.this, it will resort to this particular IP address. That's what it simply means. Okay. So majorly, that is that. Do we have, let me check if we have any question around this. So that brings us to the end of the class for today.